Hello and welcome to the show. Tina Marie here, introducing another awesome soul who is here to share her journey of taking herself from, those places in her lives that didn't feel like they were moving so well, and maybe it's frustrating, into wisdom. And she's here to share that with you today. I can't wait to hear this story because I'm going to be learning alongside you. Let me introduce you to Dr. Lisa Olszewski, and she has a website. You're going to jot this down. It's Dr. Lisa O, the letter O, Dr. Lisa O, DrLisao.com. And there she shares her beautiful wisdom and amazing gifts for you. You're going to want to subscribe to her list and get all the goodies that she has. We'll be sharing more about that. So Dr. Lisa is a chiropractor, a naturopath, and a keto nutrition fanatic. I'm going to be asking her questions about that personally. And she's known to travel across the globe, especially when we're not in a pandemic. She loves to have dinner with friends just on a whim and rack up frequent flyer miles. I love that too. And so her main gig is to help you live healthy, abundant, fulfilling, amazing lives. Thank you, Dr. Lisa, for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about this.
I am too. And so what had you become a doctor? I wanted to start there because chiropractic is a very close love of my own heart, saved me from so many years of pain. And I was in the dark about how the body really worked until I found chiropractic. So help us understand what brought you to that beautiful world.
It's one of those things. I've been under chiropractic care since I was born. Actually, my mom was, while she was pregnant with me, was under chiropractic care. So I've really been fortunate that way. And people oftentimes just assume that my dad or somebody in my family was a chiropractor, but that wasn't the case. My grandmother was pregnant with my dad, and she was actually, they actually told my grandfather, they didn't tell her, to take really good care of his wife because only one person would make it out of the pregnancy alive, and it was not going to be her. Right. So this was the early 1950s. So she had a heart condition. And literally her dad happened to see, who was a milkman, and on a delivery, like literally people always laugh. I'm like, yeah, cool. He was a milkman. On a delivery one day, he saw somebody crawl into an office and walk out. But as you and I both know, it was an unmarked office. So in the early 1950s, chiropractic still was not legal. So he asked that person what happened in there, and the guy told him about chiropractic. So he literally went home and told my grandfather to take his daughter into, to get my grandmother into the chiropractor. And so she made it out of the pregnancy alive. She had my dad, and she lived to be 92. And I grew up thinking that everybody's grandmother, this was my busha, right, as in Polish, everybody's grandmother fed them probiotics and did yoga poses and listened to Deepak Chopra. Like, this was in the 80s, right?
So fortunate. That's so cool.
So it was always a part of my life. But that being said, my mom is a nurse. And so, I had the medical model as well. But I always thought I remember having a migraine like in 6th grade and going to the chiropractor for that. And my piano teacher's looking at me saying, why would you see a chiropractor for like your head? And because I would have the auras where I would lose my vision. She's like, it makes no sense. And I just sat there thinking like, well, as a 6th grader, it makes sense to me. Like your brain sends signals. So if it's not sending the right signal, that might be why my vision's off. It was that stuff that made sense. So I really, I know I was chosen to be a chiropractor. Like I woke up one day, my junior year of high school, and said, this is what I'm doing. I wanted to be an engineer up until that point, and just flipped it and just went through chiropractics, or went through undergrad. Actually had, I had one of my advisors in undergrad who I went and studied overseas in England. And during that time period, he said, you will never become a chiropractor under my watch. He said, while you are in, right, exactly. This is such a blessing. While you are in England, I want you to do a paper on the differences of osteopathy and chiropractic. And you will come back and you are going to apply to Michigan State to become an osteopath, because I will not allow you to go to chiropractic school.
Goodness.
Right. So, I did all my research. You can even ask me to this day. I know everything between osteopathy and chiropractic. And I walked into a chiropractor's office in London, England, and he looked at me and he's like, how amazing is it that you can go to Palmer? He said, I, had to go to England, like someplace here, because I didn't want to go to another country. But he's like, you have it how many hours away? That's where this all started. And I came back and I looked at this advisor and was like, I'm going to become a chiropractor. Here's your paper. Here's the whole whatever I did. And he's like, find another advisor. So I found another advisor, and he was encouraging me, wrote my recommendation for chiropractic school, and So it's a very long story, but that's how I got into
No,
it.
it's a great story because Lisa, that is the hero's journey, right?
Yes.
You had this vision and this knowing and this history that was
Mhm.
supporting you, like an ancestral history, this beautiful path ahead. And it's even like the Dorothys, you had all these things against you, right? And you had to get there, right? And the hero's journey is you stayed the course. You stayed true to your knowing inside. And how many of us, from whatever circumstances in life, we drop that connection of our knowing, and then we reap the little bricks on the head to say, get back on your path. So thank you for listening. Thank you for staying consistent.
Yeah.
And thank you for not listening to that advisor or being, swept away with his opinion.
Right. I know. And it's like you had just said, and what we talk about then within chiropractic is our innate intelligence and really just listening to that course. And I was just kind of chuckling, like, my innate is good. I got this.
It is good. Star Wars came out. It's like the force is strong with you, right? And so our forces are innate intelligence. And I'm so glad that we've met, and that to know that you're a chiropractor. And more than that, you said history a couple years ago. You became the first female president in the state of Michigan for the chiropractic board. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So that's actually, I was just elected a couple of weeks ago as the first president, the first female president. But I want to say maybe 10 years ago, I am so lost on time anymore, but became the first woman to serve on the executive committee. So I've been there for a decade now. But yeah, pretty amazing.
Some round of applause here. That's awesome.
It's been really super cool and super just humbling that it's like, wow.
Yeah, here you are.
Yeah. So, I mean, and Michigan's one of the strongest associations, probably, this is not to be arrogant, but probably in the world within chiropractic, right? Like, it's a very strong association. So it's really cool to be doing this. And I know, like, especially in this pandemic, we're probably going to have some uncharted territory. We have this last year, and it's probably only going to continue. So I'm really honored that the current chairman of the board, we both went to school together at Palmer 20 years ago. So I've known him for a long time. And I was like, it's awesome. It's so serendipitous that we are leading this organization right now together
at this time, right? How awesome is that? Yeah, we could talk about chiropractic all day long because I love it so much, and hope that everybody gets a curiosity from this discussion to go really find out what chiropractic is, because it's the original innate intelligence, the way you were born. We are never born broken or deficient. We're born with everything intact, and we just need to light it up. That's what the show's about. Light your life, right? And so you've come through your own dark night of the soul into this beautiful place where you now are living a life where you can help others. Where did that begin? What were those challenges that you've had to surmount?
So it's a healing journey. I think even for doctors, where they always say, "Doctor, heal thyself," right? And for me, I am that girl and it goes back to the fact of, like, just being okay with who we are. Right. Like, and for me, I was never good enough. I was never skinny enough. I was never pretty enough. And so for me, I was walking into this always like relationships not working or whatever it was. And I reached a tipping point in probably 2014, 2015, because I literally was eating right. I was doing paleo before paleo was ever given the word of it. Right. And not just that, but doing a high fat, low carb paleo, which is keto. And I was CrossFitting 5 days a week. Like, I was doing everything right. And I was struggling to be like a size 12 or 14. And for me, I was like, okay, this really sucks, because our society says, like, if you're not skinny, you're not healthy, which is, we know that's the furthest from the truth, because you can be skinny and super unhealthy. So I had a very well-intentioned friend who, like, literally looked at me at the fall of 2015. And she's like, "What's wrong with you?" And I was like, "What do you mean by this?" And she's like, literally, I see what you eat. I see how hard you work out. You should be a size 0. There is something wrong with your body. And so in 2016, at the beginning of the year, it was January, I started doing some really strict intermittent fasting, because that was about the time period that the whole intermittent fasting bandwagon had started. So I was following a bunch of male bloggers, and I was doing it, and I was doing like, I love intermittent fasting when done correctly. So here's my caveat, right? Ladies, we need to do it differently. But I was following all these male bloggers, and they're saying what to do. So I literally was eating basically 1 to 2 very small meals a day. So I was doing low calorie, low fat, like everything wrong. It was the perfect storm. It was everything that I knew I shouldn't be doing, but it was me trying to get that body so people thought I was okay, right? Like, because I would talk to my patients about not eating sugar, and I felt like I was being judged by them, because they would look at me being like, "Oh, really? Like, I
Yeah. Who are you?
one lady. Oh my God. I just really remember where she was like, just looked at me and was like, really? Like you're fat. Like you can't, I think you're lying to me. And I'm like, I am not lying to you. I haven't had sugar in how many years? Right. So I did this and I lost 30 pounds. Like it was great. I lost 30 pounds, but with it, I lost my health.
Yeah.
So
What were
went,
the symptoms of losing your health?
oh my gosh, I was purely exhausted. I was coming home every lunch hour to sleep. What really hit me was that I was actually out at a seminar in California. I was getting ready for a big gala. And during this whole time period when I was losing this weight, like I hadn't lost a lot of hair, which I thought was really interesting because I always just shed a lot of hair, right? I think a lot of women like we do because we got a lot of hair.
This is one of our telltale signs of health.
Right.
When our hair starts
So
falling.
yeah. So I literally was getting ready for this gala. I washed my hair and I remembered I had a chunk of hair in my hand. And I was like, wow, that's really weird. Was that like, 6 weeks worth of hair loss all at once? Like, that's so weird. Didn't realize what had happened yet. I went in, and at this point, I think I'd probably skipped a couple of periods and I knew I wasn't pregnant. I was like, okay, something's off. And I went into my hairstylist and she's like, Lisa, okay, first off, you need to stop what you're doing. You don't look well. She's like, you just are way too skinny at this point. And then as she was combing out my hair, she's like, I have to show you something. And I laughed. And I was like, what? Do I have a bald spot back there? And she was, I have to show you something. And lo and behold, like I was losing chunks of hair and I went into a full-blown panic attack, like couldn't breathe. Right. And
I can imagine.
Right.
Yeah.
So she's like, I'm calling the ambulance on you. I'm like, no, you're not. Like, I'm in a town of 5,000 people. I'm the chiropractor. You are not sending me to the hospital.
Everybody's going to talk. They're all going to know that.
Everyone's going to know this. I'm like, just give me. And I remember her bringing me an orange and I was able to calm down. But at that point, I realized I need to stop this. And so,
quick question to the listeners. How many of us have done similar things? We want a result. And we want that result so bad to the detriment of ourselves. And that could be in any area of life, right?
It was.
And so what happened after that?
Right. So, I mean, it was such a hard climb from there. And so I remember started to dig, figuring that, hey, intermittent fasting, not working for women. And literally some of, I love you guys. I love guys. Like just get me, but the fact of the matter is
two different beings. I mean,
right. When the guys are telling us, what to do. And that was when I started seeing the guys are like, nope, you're just doing it wrong. Do it more. It works. It works. It's worked great for us. It's going to work great for you.
Approach.
Exactly. You're not doing it right. That's why it's not working for you. Do it more. You're cheating, right? No. And then I sat there and had that epiphany. I was like, oh my gosh, if I'm not even feeding myself enough for my body, of course my body's going to respond this way and say, Lisa, you can't get pregnant right now. How could you ever have a baby and make another human being when you're not even nourishing yourself? So no wonder my period stopped. No wonder all of this stuff was going on.
Right.
And so there were several other women that were out there screaming like, this isn't right. And then finally, one of the male bloggers was like, hey, something's off here. My wife's having issues. And it was like, well, no shit. Like we've been saying this for how long? And you guys keep telling us that we're wrong, but it's now your wife is telling you, right? So it is what it is. And that's been the catalyst of why I'm doing what I'm doing now. But it was just so much. I remember being at 2 different seminars and 2 different men walking up to me. One of them literally one day was like, Lisa, you look so sexy now. And I cringed because I sat there thinking, I have had my hair up in a ponytail for a year. I can't wear my hair down. I am sleeping. If I could sleep all day, I would. And you're finally telling me that, or you're telling me I finally look sexy. Yeah. I was so angry, right?
Isn't that the irony though? That's, at some level, a part of you, not all of you, because there's a wise part of you that knows that isn't the game, right? But a part of you ached for that acceptance, acknowledgement, love, right? That's what we all want. We want that love from our world. And then to be hit with it at the time where it's costing your life and realizing it wasn't it. No, that wasn't it, right?
It was exactly it. And so I think it's been such this is 4 or 5 years at this point. So it's so good now. Guess what? I've gained back weight. Yay. You know what? My body will never be a perfect size 4 or 6. All right. I have a butt. That's the reality of what it is. I have hips, it is what it is. Deal with it, guys. I got a big ass, but It is. And so there's so
Oh,
much like,
genetics.
yeah. And it is. So I've just come back to that realization of like, now I am healthier. Like all my hair has come back. Like you can search my, like
Looks awesome.
everything's good. Like, like I am finally back and I am finally, oh, I have done so much energy work. I have done so much and it is okay. Right. Like if a guy doesn't find me sexy, fine. Tough. You know what
Not
I
it.
do? Like I like who I am. I love who I am.
Yes.
So for me, like to go back that 5 years ago and to sit here and think like, hey, fast forward 5 years, Lisa, you're going to love who you are. Like what we were talking even beforehand, before we hit record,
Mhm.
some of the projects I've been working on and how I have been able to open up and be vulnerable to help other women.
Mhm.
And
And
now,
be
you know, into,
absolutely real.
oh my
Mhm.
gosh, it is so needed. And I can't even like, my parents are going to freak if they ever hear me talking about some of the stuff I'm talking about. It is what it is. Mom and dad, deal with
It's awesome.
it.
Yeah, before we hit record, I was sharing that one of my radio shows back when I was on radio, and it was Why Men Have Nipples. And so my daughter is on a softball team, and I was going, it had already aired on Tuesday. We're at the softball fields on Friday night, starting the weekend tournaments. And I'm walking up, and in between, so you're walking down this pathway, and in between on either side are the stands that the parents are in. And I can't see because they've got a screen there who's sitting there, but someone yells out, "Now I know why I have nipples." That's a guy, one of the parents. So I had a lot of listeners in our softball teams, and everybody started laughing. But that was one of the highest ranking shows on the radio. And by the way, fast forward, the reason why is because everybody's female up until a certain point of gestation, which I think is within 4 weeks, and then you turn into a male. So you're welcome. You started with good foundation, all the guys out there. And that's
Right.
why everybody has nipples.
And it's also like heading a little further south, like the same thing. We've all got the same type of stuff there on some of the topics I was talking about yesterday.
Exactly. So you guys need to follow Dr. Lisa's podcast.
I mean, it's so crazy. Like I'm always, and you know this, I'm an introvert. So the fact like to be sitting here and to be like so open on this is me forcing, but it's also, I've realized like you have to play full out because it's going to help impact somebody else, right? Like
Completely.
I don't want another woman to ever go through what I went through, right? So that I am screaming from the mountains, like, hey ladies, if you're doing intermittent fasting and you're really struggling, let's change it up, right? Like let's do something different.
So how do women do it correctly?
Right. So we've got to change. I mean, especially our hormones, I was like, our cycles are pure. What's the word I'm looking for?
Hormones.
Our hormones shift, 28 days out of the month. And so the fact is we've always got to be kind of shifting that with our body too. I love keto. I don't love keto 28 days out of the month though for women. I like to break that. I like to do cyclical keto. So in and out of ketosis. I really love eating for our hormones and that type of stuff. And so intermittent fasting for sure. My biggest thing that I always just tell people is like, let's stop eating after dinner and go for 12 hours without eating. Typically,
go.
most people can do that. Some people can't, but let's work toward that. And then sometimes, you know what, let's take a day when you just forget breakfast and go 16 hours. Like that's fine. But what I was doing was like 20 hours every single day for months on end. Let's not do that because that's
Wow. That's a lot.
and so every once in a while, yeah, I'll pull out a 24-hour fast, but I'm not doing that every day. I'm not doing that.
Right.
So it is. I kind of like some days I play with, or some weeks I play with a 5-2 rule that it's different. And I work with it for each woman. Like I always tell the ladies, like, pay attention to when you're craving carbs. Some of us crave carbs during our period, right? Some of us crave carbs the week before. Some people crave during ovulation. So just really becoming in tune and
Some
eating.
people crave carbs because there's a stressful situation at work.
Yeah. Right. And so those things we got to figure out how to adapt with those. We need to normalize our stress levels.
Carbs in the form of wine.
Yeah. There is keto wine though.
Keto wine. I like that.
Yeah.
So help people understand what intermittent fasting is for those that may not understand why we would want to do intermittent fasting.
Yeah, intermittent fasting. So every single time that we eat food, regardless of what it is, there's an increase in our blood sugar, right? So if we're eating a lot of carbohydrates, there's going to be an even higher increase in our blood sugar. And so really to make this as simple as possible. So we eat, blood sugar goes up, and then we have to counteract it with different hormones, right? And so when it goes up and down and up and down and up and down a lot, and when it's a very stressful diet, so lots of carbohydrates, lots of refined sugars, that's why we see diabetes happening, right? Because your body finally at some point says, okay, this is too much sugar. I can't tolerate this anymore. And I think of, when I was growing up, type 2 diabetes was called adult onset diabetes.
Right.
Type 1 is totally different, but type 2 was something that it took about 40 years for a bad eating habits for it to happen in somebody. But we now don't call it type 2, or we don't call it adult onset anymore. It's just type 2 because so many children are literally eating their way into diabetes within the first 10 years of life. So the process of intermittent fasting is, let's decrease the amount of times that blood sugar goes up and down and up and down and up and down. So if we can open up our fasting window or closing up our eating window. So literally, like I said, if you stop eating dinner at 6 o'clock at night, like be done. Don't do little snacks throughout, like be done at 6 o'clock and go 12 hours before you throw any food in your belly, in the next morning. And so that gives your body 12 hours of like without blood sugar spikes, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And so, sometimes I've learned it through patients. Some people wake up to eat a midnight snack. Like that's, so if that's the case, let's stop that, right? Like you don't have to have another meal in the middle of the night. So let's look at it that way. And then, let's start adding on some hours. So if you can go like 6 p.m. to 10 a.m., that's a 16-hour fasting window. But, for people that aren't used to that, it might be more difficult. So let's start out with 10 hours or however it is, and just kind of work your way up on that fasting muscle and like working that up.
And what are they going to be looking for to know that it's working for them or that this is appropriate as far as new feeling within their body or new things that they're realizing?
I think people will pay attention as to when they are actually hungry instead of just eating, right? I think a lot of us just kind of eat for boredom, or it's because, hey, it's breakfast, it's habit, we have to eat. It's the most important meal of the day, right? Or whatever it is that way. But what I find, because as you start doing that, a lot of times people will kind of naturally switch more into a ketosis state of they're actually burning fat for fuel rather than carbohydrates for fuel. And when you really get into a state of ketosis, there's such brain clarity. That brain fog just gets lifted. Your body starts utilizing that form for energy. So they've got more energy throughout the day. And then they notice they can go longer without eating because you're tapping into the excess fat in your body for fuel rather than these short bursts of, sugar spikes of whatever. Maybe it was cereal and then a Pop-Tart and then some sticker, whatever, like a candy bar or whatever, which is just a very short form of fuel.
Yeah. It's like that short distance running versus long distance running, right?
Yeah. It's like running the marathon versus, doing
That's
a sprint.
awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I circle this back to that earlier version of Lisa that was looking for that acceptance by an outside person, force, culture, right? And what I hear about for myself with keto or any diet, I had to check inside myself first to make sure I'm doing this for me. Because if I'm not doing it for me and it's outside, fueled, then I can blame or resent or let it go, right? Because it takes too much energy to do it for other people. And have you found that as well, that whenever you tap into doing something for yourself and being in alignment with what your needs are, that there's a whole different fuel source there?
It is. And I think that's I don't do gluten, and it took me years to figure out that I had a sensitivity to gluten. But I remember even being a kid, like I hated eating lunch at school because I knew I would just not feel well. Yeah. And I kind of thought everybody felt bad after they ate, right? So it wasn't until I went away to college when I realized my roommates weren't miserable after they ate that I was like, oh, there's something off here. And then, went to chiropractic school. So I started digging into all the supplements. And then it was finally at one point that it clicked for me, like, why don't you eliminate gluten? And it was a game changer in my life.
Wow.
That being said, to fast forward, it's also going through and now healing up a leaky gut and all that type of stuff has tremendously helped. But I remember being at a Christmas party several years back, and one of the ladies here in town, another business owner, looked at me and she was like, well, just eat one of these cookies. I'm like, oh gosh, I'm fine. And she's like, oh, you're just so good. And I'm like, no, right. And I was like, I said, do you understand, like, if I eat that, how miserable I'm going to feel? Like I said, she's like, that's got to be horrible that you have to deal with that. And I'm like, no, this is such an amazing, but I am so grateful that I figured this out. And there's no reason. I'm like, if I eat that, I am miserable, that I have no desire that I even want to eat that. Or I sit there and in my head, I go through and think of the ingredients in it that are all the toxicity that I don't really, just over the course, I don't want to feed my body that, because what I put into my body becomes my cells, and I want a healthy, vibrant Lisa, and I want every organ to be functioning properly. And why would I feed it something suboptimally? Like it would be like putting really crappy fuel in my car and then wondering why I'm chugging along, right? Like
exactly. And for people to just say, it's okay to put the crappy fuel in your car. Just come on. Like, why don't you go along with the show, right?
Mm-hmm.
Culture. There was this one lady that did that. I used to be a vegan. It wasn't a strict vegan. I wasn't that person that was trying to change the world by everybody becoming vegan and not killing cows and the atmosphere is being impacted. I wasn't that person. It was a choice that I led to over time realizing that my body operated a whole lot better on plant-based diet than it did on anything meat-based. Not that meat-based for other people didn't work. I wasn't going to be preaching. And I was at this one, so I was at a family gathering, and my brother called earlier to say, "What do we feed you? Like, we just need to know what
Right.
to do. What are we going to feed you?" And I'm
Lettuce.
like, "Salads, vegetables. You have those, right?" Like at the meal. And he goes, "Yeah, so salad's okay. That's all you need is a salad."
Mm-hmm.
But at that luncheon, at that meal, I remember this lady going, "Wow, like, isn't this bad for your health that you're not having any meat? Like, you're gonna, have you thought about what that's gonna do to you?" And I didn't want to give a long diatribe, right?
Yeah.
So I just simply looked across the table and I went, interesting. And then I kept eating. Like, I'm not gonna, I mean, there's sometimes a conversation is not necessary, right?
No, I agree. And it's just one of those things, even like, like I did a little stint with carnivore too, right? And it was like all of a sudden my mom's like, I don't even know what to have for you when you come over for holiday meals. And I'm like, I'll figure it out. Like, or, people were always like, oh, well, what restaurant can you go to? I'm like, I will figure it out, guys. Like, you don't have to write it, like, and maybe that was something about like worthiness and being like, oh, can't make everybody pick the restaurant based on me. But, it was just like, come on, guys, whatever. Like, I can figure this out. Like, it's not like I have the
Us.
plague. Like, just choosing not to eat bread. Come on.
It's fun. And so now you help so many people with their health. And as a chiropractor, I know you're adjusting them as well to keep their spine healthy and their nervous system healthy, which is what it truly is about. Chiropractic is about the health of the nervous system. By the way, your bones I'm going to give a little stint for you because I'm not the chiropractor. However, I've learned is that the spine houses the nervous system, which is the guidance system for everything in your body. I also love that the spinal cord is what develops first.
Yes.
In utero.
I know.
Isn't that fun?
I know. I think I love it. Right. I always say that with chiropractors too. I'm like, yeah, no, absolutely. It's so important.
And then the first organ, if I'm correct on this, is the heart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like when I'll talk to people, I'm like, what do you think controls everything? The heart. I'm like, well, what sends a signal to the heart?
Yeah, right. What starts that, right? What keeps that
like,
going?
Well, let's go up one more step.
Let's go one more level. Source zero, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're not taught this stuff in school.
No.
And so I wish we were. That would be so much a blessing for our youth and our world to teach itself of its body and the magnificence that we're born with and how it actually operates. Oh, one day. Hey, you're the president of the Michigan State.
Yeah,
so come on, Chica.
Especially now that everyone's virtual, we can do this.
There you go. And so I know you help so many people in your practice, and you've taken your wisdom into the ethers of digital as well. And you produce summits for people so they can gather more knowledge from other experts. And then also you have your own programs that people can follow. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've taken from the physical world that you work with inside your practice and move that into digital? What can we find?
Yeah. And that was the thing. I think I realized here I am, somebody that had 2 health degrees, like 2 doctorates. And even though I did, right. No, I was like that. And I failed. Like I didn't fail the doctors. I failed my body because I followed it. And I just sat there thinking like, I knew everything I was doing was wrong, but I was so wanting to be skinny. And so that's when I was like, I have to help more people because there's so much information now online, it's a great resource to have. However, it is so downright confusing and you can find every single person preaching something different. And yeah, it's all so conflicting. And I just sat there thinking there needs to be a resource that gives actual information. And I get this all the time, or not all the time. I have gotten it where people are like, Dr. Lisa, your health is so far up here. I don't know if I want to get all the way up here, but I could deal with this. Or healthy living is there's too much to figure out. And I was like, I've got to make healthy living simple. And so that's how I started the Health Institute. And you'll love this. I always steal the Tony Robbins line where, when we look at our children and they're crawling, learning to walk, we never, as they, falling and stumbling, they continue. And we never look at them and say, my kid's not a walker. He's never going to get there.
Never going to make it.
Yeah. We do it with ourselves all the time. I tried that diet once. It wasn't for me. I did this. It's not for me. Hey, I went to a chiropractor once. Not for me. I hate that one. Right. Like,
Mhm.
oh, did you try dentistry once too? And you just gave up? Like, come on.
Right.
So that's why I started the Health Institute. And then so it was through courses, it's through virtual summits. So we did the Keto Virtual Summit several years back, and we've got the Women's Health Summit that's coming out here. So that's been amazing. Like, because we're helping to impact not just one or two people, but thousands of people with that. And then it is like, I can't virtually adjust people, but I can help teach them healthy living. And that's my courses. And then so people really want to dive deep. And we do a lot of like healing up a leaky gut, right? Like we got to
Mhm.
take care of that. So that way we can actually assimilate or like, actually take your vitamins and herbs, but make sure that your body's getting the best nutrients versus just
You can
passing through.
absorb it.
Mhm.
So you grew up around this healthy living lifestyle, the language of probiotics, the language of gluten-free, the language of the consciousness of what you're putting in your body first is going to determine the outcome and the way you feel. And I think our culture, if you would agree or share, right? It's just coming into that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like the last 20 years it's been coming. And now I see and hear, if I'm in a restaurant, I overhear millennial moms talking about probiotics for their kids and we need to get him off the sugar and I don't feed my kid pizza and all these different things, which I was the weird mom. I mean, my kids, if they were on here listening, for Halloween, I would give away apple slices, or I had a dehydrator. I'd make raw fruit roll-ups
That's
that were
awesome.
organic, and I would roll them up and give away these. They were so delicious, and we made raw cookies and all this kind of stuff. And my kids came to me one year because I think I did it one year, and then they were like, they ganged up on me the next year. They're like, "We can't do this. We're embarrassment of this neighborhood." And so they said they went to CVS, they walked to CVS and bought a big bag of all the little bitty chocolates. And I found it and I was like, what is this doing in the house? And they're like, Mom, we can't do that anymore. People talk about us. But today,
Yeah.
and when they went off for their sleepovers, they had their food packed for them. Or when they went to camp, they were
Mhm.
my son was the one that was bringing all the food. And people are like, what are you eating over there?
Right.
But now today they're the ones, my kids are like, no, I know how to heal myself. I know to use food to heal myself and not antibiotics. I know how to heal myself because I'm listening to my body first. You grew up around this.
Yeah.
It's a natural language for you and your consciousness. What message would you love to give to the world about paying attention more and trusting that part of us that knows?
Right. And it's one of those things though that it has been an evolution because I even go back to the fact that when I was in grad school 20 years ago, I thought Splenda was a really great thing.
Oh,
Right. So
yeah.
that's the reality of it is like people see where those of us are and they think like they don't realize the decades that it took to get here.
Mhm.
And it's just one little step. So if you are following like whatever you feel that you can do right now, and this is how I try to make it simple, right? Like if all you can do is add in a couple of green veggies today and that's it, you're going to be, healthier or sicker tomorrow, right? Like, and if you only do that every single day for the next month, where will you be in a month? Or, like the example of like, what if you, walk to the end of the driveway today and then tomorrow you walk a little bit further and then a little bit further. Again, will you be healthier or sicker a year from now? Like, probably those little decisions are going to accumulate
Right.
into a really nice, healthier life. So don't do it all at once. When people come into the practice and they're like, I want to, become a vegan and I'm going to start working out or I'm running a marathon and I'm going to do a triathlon, like all this stuff. And I'm like, have you worked out before? Like, no, let's do something because I don't want you to give up on it. I don't want you to
Yeah.
say, I tried that, it didn't work. Let's make one simple change and build upon that. Maybe it's adding in a good multivitamin, right? Like, who knows what it is?
Right. And then notice, pay attention to how that effect is. I had to keep a journal
Mm-hmm.
so that I would be more conscious about it because that lower mind comes in whenever, you're out with friends and they're eating and you're eating and I'm gluten free. And
Yeah.
so whenever I would slip, I would pay the price.
Mm-hmm.
And so understanding how you work as
Yeah.
opposed to how other people work, that's the only person we can change is
That's
ourselves.
all it meant. Yeah. Really. It's like we can focus on us. Like, let's work on
Boy,
that.
is that enough curriculum for me. I'm like, if I
I know
focus on
I've got
myself,
too much. I can't
I
focus
got a
on
lot to
anybody
work
else.
on. And so you have Healthy Simple, Healthy Living
Living.
Simple. That is how they find you on IG, on Instagram.
Yes.
So it's at sign Healthy Living Simple. And then on LinkedIn, you're Dr. Lisa
Yeah.
Olszewski. I use so many wonderful words together, the letters
Yeah.
together. And you've released the Healthy Vibrant Women Summit. Could you tell us a little bit about that summit and how they can find out more?
Yeah. That's something that it has been on my heart to do probably since 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And when COVID happened and we were all, like I was on an airplane every single weekend. I think the last time I flew was when I met you, right? That was my last flight in February.
Mm-hmm.
I all of a sudden had a lot of time on my hands. And so after my house was cleaned and everything out to Goodwill, I'm like, okay, it's time. Like, it's time for me to, so I launched a podcast and I started recording for the summit. So literally, I recorded for months. There are over 40 some women and they are the most amazing experts. You were also on it and I loved the interview that we did, but I love how it evolved because at first I walked in like, all right, we're going to talk health. And then it got into, you know what? No, it's not just health. There's so many things that we as women need to know about. And maybe we don't even know we need to know about.
Right.
Or there's something happening to our bodies and we're afraid to ask to find out if it's normal, or whatever it was. So I had to shed a lot of layers to be able to get behind the microphone and just start talking about the stuff and get rid of, anything of what people. So ladies, I'll put myself on, I made myself vulnerable to ask the questions. So, different things. And you think of, like incontinence or what orgasms. Like we talked everything. We even talked about relationships, and what happens if there's betrayal in a relationship, or what if you find yourself in a divorce? What if, like, all of these different things. So you know what? Not every single woman's going to listen to all 40 some episodes because some of them might just totally not resonate with you. But there's other ones like, how do we do this to get our partner to help out with all of the workload at home? Because the reality is, no matter the woman, like it's because of who we are. We carry, or we're always juggling multiple balls in the air all the time. Like the fact that we're not dropping them is amazing. And so like we are honoring that superhero in every single woman, I think, and just showing, like, just going through all of that. So
I love it. I love it. I love that you put this together because I saw the lineup and I'm like, wow, this is so much power in this one summit. And I wish you all the best with getting that out there, literally to millions of women, because we all need to have this support system for ourselves. And then also for the gentlemen to understand that you've got so many resources for them at your website and on the podcast, because our health is the one asset that we own and control. And I've had to learn this the hard way multiple times, unfortunately. And whenever our health is gone, everything else is going to fail. Whenever our health is great, then we are unstoppable.
Yes,
right.
It is. And we can take care of it. And, you just think of Steve Jobs had all the money in the world, but you have no health. So it's like, let's really focus on our health and have all of it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being who you are in the world.
Thank you.
It's awesome.
Thank you.
So everybody take a note. You're going to first and foremost, you're going to go to drlisao.com. That's where you're going to find everything. It's just your one-stop shop, drlisao.com. And there you're going to find, I know she's not going to stop here. She does have the Healthy Vibrant Woman Summit. She's got the ketovirtualsummit.com website, and she's got so much more resources there for you. You want to put Dr. Lisa O in your back pocket and keep her close to where you're going to start making your decisions for a healthier, more vibrant, fulfilling life. And may all your wishes come true. And thank you for being just a wonderful light in our world. We couldn't do this without people like you.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Until next time, I know we're going to have more wonderful times together. Have a wonderful time. Thanks, Dr. Lisa.
Thank you.